Good evening, everybody. I will now call this Committee of the Whole meeting, Monday, December 15th, 2025, to order at 5 p.m. First, we would respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the unceded ancestral territory of the Silks, Okanagan peoples and the Splatseen of the Secwepemc Nation. First, we'll be looking for an adoption of the agenda that the December 15th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Todd, second by Councillor Wayner. All those in favor? That'll be carried. And next, looking for an adoption of the minutes, that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting August 25th, 2025 be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Drapala, and I have to look to the other side of the table. Second by Councillor Todd. And all those in favor? And that too shall be carried. And we look forward now to the presentation of the 2026-2030 5-year financial plan by Mr. Terry Martins. I'll hand it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we'll start with page 1, being the highest level summary of the 5-year plan. It's designed to be a complete one-page view of the entire 5-year financial plan. Fairly self-explanatory there. For in shaded in green are the estimated amounts for the next 5 years for revenue and expenses. This is consolidated. It includes water, sewer, and projects. It also includes taxes collected and remitted for other governments. So this is the full meal deal. It's everything all combined together. So the reason why there are some fluctuations year by year, that is almost entirely due to projects, because projects, they tend to go up and down depending on which ones are being dealt with in which year. So this, again, is everything all inclusive. So if you scroll to the bottom of that page, you'll see for 2026, there is a small surplus of about $4,500 there. The budget itself has been revised multiple times over the past couple of months as it was being developed. And this was the remaining surplus amount after the last change that was made. So rather than balancing it, I left it in there for now. Eventually, yes, we will have to have a balanced budget, but that just goes to show right now there is available right now $4,500 of general revenue for possible changes. So I kept it in there at this point. So the next page shows the same information for 2026, again consolidated, but graphical form. What you're looking at on the big screen is the proposed revenue. So again, that is inclusive of revenue coming for projects, so funding sources for projects, as well as operations or operating revenue. And because it includes funding for projects, you can see that taxes are relatively small in the pie at 17.9%, whereas sale of services is 17.5%. That's a facet that I just wanted to dwell on for a second. With the structure of our fees, or sale of services as they are officially called, we are actually almost to the same level in the pie as taxes. And for many small communities, that is not the case. Taxes usually are the biggest piece. And in our case here, fees and taxes are very similar to each other as far as proportional size. We're also showing their proceeds from borrowing in the dark green, and that is for phase 1 of the water project that we'll talk about shortly. So scrolling down to expenses, you can see that the biggest chunk there is for projects based on the projects that are on the proposed books for 2026. So again, this is consolidated, shows everything, all of the services as well. So on to the next page, we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive now into revenue by category. So what I wanted to focus on here for taxes, that the top section is the city taxes. So these are the taxes that we get to keep as revenue. These are not taxes for other agencies. This is our own. The city has 3 assessment-based tax levies, general, police, and infrastructure. So what's in the proposed budget right now is a general tax levy increase of 2.3% for 2026. As well, the police levy has a policy-driven increase of $35,000 per year. That is, again, by policy. Individually for that line, that is a 4.5% increase just for that line. As well, the infrastructure tax levy has a policy increase of 4.8% based on the previous year's general levy. And that works out to an additional $134,000 in revenue for that infrastructure tax levy. All of the proceeds from that levy go to the roads and drainage reserve for future capital rehabilitation of roads and drainage. As well, there's a small recreation parcel tax. That's the $20 per parcel that we collect for recreation purposes. A slight reduction there just to bring the budgeted amount closer to what the actual is. So if you look to the right there in the green shaded boxes, the combined effect of the tax increase being proposed for pre-existing tax base is 5.7%. The other line there that is shown is tax revenue from new construction. We did not have a provision in last year's budget for that. We did receive a preview from BC Assessment Authority on what we could be looking at as far as new assessment from new construction. And while it's subject to change at this point, we have put in a conservative estimate of $11,000 in additional revenue from new construction. So basically new homes primarily. So when you look at all of the tax revenue, you're looking at a 5.9% increase. But for pre-existing taxpayers, pre-existing tax base, it's 5.7 by excluding the 11,000. Okay, so we'll stay on that screen and I will jump to the next page just to go over some notes to go over with you. So taxes for other agencies, that's the revenue that we collect on behalf of agencies such as the RDNO, Library, Regional District, and Regional Hospital. We have little to no control over what those taxes are. We are obligated to collect those taxes, and so the revenue is shown on the revenue side and then an equal amount on the expense side for remittance of those taxes. So it's an in and an out. A provisional increase of 2.7% has been put in place. Again, we don't know what that is going to really be like in reality until we start receiving tax requisitions from those agencies in the spring. So this is just an estimate at this point. So on to sale of services. Overall, we're looking at a $99,000 reduction or 2.2%, and I'll explain why in a second here. We'll go over them one by one. For general sale of services, there is a reduction in regards to cemetery revenue and Fortis BC franchise fees. Those are the primary causes. The franchise fee from Fortis Gas has been going down over the past few years, so the budget is being adjusted accordingly to match more of what the actuals have been. As well as the cemetery revenue, this is the city's share is included in there, and that has gone down as well, and that was approved by Joint Council recently. For planning and development, there's an increase that we're budgeting due to overall increase in development activity in the city. So we're looking at increases potentially for development permit fees, subdivision fees, and zoning amendment fees. That has been on the rise. So again, this is a bit of a correction. So we're able to do a slight increase there for that. And for protection, there is a net large reduction for protection, and that is almost entirely due to fire department capital recoveries from the township. In 2025, there was a purchase where the township contributed their 60% towards the cost of that. In 2026, there are no projects for fire department, so that's why there is no recovery in the budget. So that explains the large reduction. It's offset slightly by several increases. One in particular is fire inspection fees. Revenue is going up, and that's due to the restructure of business licensing and fire inspection fees that council approved earlier this year, wherein fire inspection fees is being separated out of business licenses and shown as a fire revenue. So that has increased there, as well as mutual aid revenue for the fire department has increased as well. Also, we are budgeting for the first time policing cost recoveries, specifically from the IPE. That hasn't been budgeted before, so it's reasonable to include that now. And that increases those sale of services for protection. For solid waste, that is the fees that we charge for residential pickup. A slight increase has been budgeted due to population growth. However, the fee itself is not being increased at this time. This particular function has been seeing some operational surpluses, so there is no need to increase the fee. Parks and Recreation, a large increase in revenue has been budgeted, and that's based on actual revenue seen over the last 2 years. And that was previewed and approved by Joint Council recently as well. On the water side, the water fees have increased based on the pre-approved increase that Council endorsed a couple of months ago, and that is in relation to the new debt that is going to be seen for the large water reservoir project and transmission main project, which is expected to span over 3 years. So 2026 would be the first increase in those rates to prepare for paying for the debt servicing for that project. As well, there's also recoveries from the Township of Spalmachine for their share of the debt servicing costs as well. That has been built into the budget accordingly. For the sewer fund, we're seeing a minor net increase due to realigning user fees to reflect actual past revenue. No fee increases are being recommended for sewer for 2026. We have seen some surpluses in the last few years, so there is no increase warranted at this point in time. Going to the next section for licenses, permits, and fines, an overall decrease of 32,000 and change, or 18.5%. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Business licenses, as I mentioned before, are going down because we are now breaking out the fire department share of that out of the fee. And so now business licensing is strictly business license and not the fire inspection fee. As well, building permits, we've been seeing a decrease slightly over the past couple of years. So we are feeling that we need to realign what we're budgeting for business licenses to reflect that, or sorry, building permits to reflect that. Again, this is very hard to budget for. The fluctuations are unexpected. We really don't know what to expect until we get there. But the trend that we're seeing is that we needed to adjust the budget and bring it down slightly. For interest and penalties, this is mostly due to that is the investment revenue that the city has on its investments. We are estimating to drop by about 25,000, and that's due mostly to falling interest rates because the rates have been falling recently. The effect of that is somewhat offset by the fact that the city still has several long-term investments that have been locked in at rates 5 and above. So we will start seeing those mature in 2026, 27, and 28. But for now, that is our saving grace in that we can rely on those locked-in rates to offset any new investments we have at much lower rates. So I have to say kudos to my predecessor for having the foresight to do that. It's really helping us now with the lower interest rate market. Contributions from developers, budgeting an increase there based on past experience. Again, these are the amenity charges that the city currently levies for development. This does not include the effect of the new DCC bylaw when it is enacted. Because we don't know what the new DCC bylaw is going to look like yet, we have budgeted a status quo for now. Going forward, once that new bylaw is enacted, it will change the structure on how we budget for developer contributions. Going forward with DCCs, we are obligated to not record revenue until we actually use DCC money that we have received for an eligible project. That's an accounting rule that we have to follow. But for the current structure that we have, we record it as revenue as we receive it, and it gets transferred to appropriate reserves. So for now, it's status quo until we know what we're working with that bylaw. Government grants are seeing an overall reduction, and that's due mainly to grant-funded operating projects that were finished up in 2025. maybe I'll pause there and see if there's any questions from the committee on the revenue side of things.
Thank you, Worship. Mine's not about the revenue. It's just, you probably answered this earlier, but in the top part where the government grants go from 800,000 to 11 million in 2029. I'm just wondering, is that because of a bunch of projects in 2029? Was that the reason?
Yes, it is. And when we go over projects, I'll explain why. Yeah.
I think that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll go down to expenses. So we'll skip by all the notes and go down. Okay. So a couple of overarching items I just want to discuss before going into some detail here. For 2026, salaries, wages, and benefits have been structured in the budget with the following provisions. Union staff, there's a provision for a 3.5% increase, and that's in accordance with the new collective agreement. Non-union staff, there is a provision for a 3% increase. That has not been finalized yet, but that's the provision that's been built into the budget at this point. Council remuneration is based on the remuneration structure endorsed by council a couple of months ago, so that has been built in. As well, a 3% increase has been allotted for the on-call firefighters. So what joint council approved was whatever the non-union or the career firefighting staff receive, that is what the on-call firefighters would also receive. So going into general government services, there is a restructure happening in 2026 in our departmental structure that I'll explain here. Prior to 2026, there was a department called administration, which included the chief administrative officer, corporate services, finance, community services, as well as some aspects of planning and building inspection. They were all consolidated into one department, which made it very difficult to report out to council and the public on the actual costs of each of those individual departments. So we are now showing it separately starting in 2026. The administration department is gone, and now we have new departments. The CAO's office, or Chief Administrative Officer's office, that is a department all on its own, as well as corporate services, community services not pertaining to emergency service or by law enforcement, so everything else goes there, as well as finance and information technology combined into finance. So what that means is comparability from 2025's budget to 26 is a little bit challenging when you're making that kind of a change. So what I've shown there for the difference on the right-hand side, shaded in green, is consolidated for all of those, the old department and the new ones. We're looking at a net reduction of about 87,000. And what that is all about is a lot of the way that salaries have been allocated previously have been made more accurate starting in 2026. Specifically, the $111,000 of that decrease is due to three positions: the community services manager, the planning clerk, and the operations clerk, now allocated to emergency management, planning, building inspection, and those areas. So again, it's restructuring, moving it to where they really should have gone all of these years, and they haven't been. There's also a $7,800 decrease for planning and building inspection, training, and conference expenses. They are now specifically in planning and building inspection and no longer administration. There's also a decrease of about $67,000 for general consulting and legal expenses due to the completion of the joint functions structure review and anticipated reduced legal costs in 2026. So 2025 was an unusual year for those kinds of services, so it was a one-time increase, and we can bring it back down again. There is a $20,000 increase in that area for contracted GIS services or for mapping for anticipated changes to meet operational requirements. So we're going to be looking for a change in how we do our GIS mapping in 2026. So in regards to administration, those are the explanations for the net reduction. I kind of skipped ahead a bit going back to the council line. There is a $9,900 increase for council, and that is mostly due to the new remuneration structure that's in place for 2026, as well as a marginal increase for council training, and the conference budget has been increased as well. There was a desire of council to see more money put aside for education for councils, so that has been increased and bumped up accordingly. Also, an increase in the overall administration area is $22,500 for the civic election in 2026. That's a one-time increase, obviously, for just the 1 year. There's also an increase for one-time records management costs. The city is looking at revamping the records management system in 2026, so there are some small costs there that are one-time. And of course, there are increases for salaries, wages, and benefits for that area as well. That amounts to about $53,000. So altogether, a net reduction of $86,000 and change for that area. Fiscal services is also a new area, a new department that was created that encompasses grant payments to organizations, as well as the administration recovery from water and sewer. So that's why it's a net negative. Most of that is administration recoveries from the utilities. Just because the utility funds don't have their own administration staff, the general government area does the administration on behalf of water and sewer. So there needs to be a provision in water and sewer for administration. So this is the recovery. It's like an internal payment, so to speak. City Hall building is in there. There is a small increase budgeted there as well. It's pretty minor. That is due to increased janitor contract costs. We have a new contract in place for our janitorial, and it was a moderate increase. So down to protective services. Overall, a $57,000 approximate increase for protective services. So this includes policing, fire department, bylaw enforcement and dog control, building inspection, and emergency management. For policing, a 3.2% increase is being built into the budget, and that is based on the most recent 5-year budget received from the RCMP. That budget also includes a provision for increased RCMP member pay beginning in fiscal year April 1st, 2026. Any retro pay issued in 2026 for the previous fiscal year that we're in right now, so April 25 to March 26, when that happens, that can be funded out of our own policing reserve. We won't know what that is until after the fact, but starting fiscal April 1, 2026 for RCMP, the retro pay estimate has been built in for police members. Member strength is budgeted at 4 officers, whereas actual costs are based on current deployment, which can range anywhere between 3 and 4 members, depending on current deployment. This usually results in an annual surplus, which can be put away in the reserve for future unexpected or unusual costs, such as retro pay. And with the new policy that council approved last council meeting for the reserve policy, that is now automatic, where any kind of budget surplus for RCMP for policing will go to the RCMP reserve. Fire department. The joint fire department overall had a 3% increase, which was approved by joint council on December 2nd. However, the Armstrong's share of that results in an actual year-over-year decrease, and that's because the budgeted share comparison from 25 to 26 is due to the allocation split changing substantially between what was budgeted in 25 and what we're seeing for 2026. So that is based on the property assessments relative to both communities. So that is why there is a reduction there for the budget. Year over year, it's a reduction for our portion. For bylaw and dog control, a net decrease of 7.5% or $10,000 in change. And that is due to the revised allocation of the community services manager position from a 50% allocation down to a 1/3. Now, what happened there is that the community services manager going forward will be split 1/3 by law enforcement, 1/3 emergency management, and 1/3 just community services. So it's a new way of allocating that salary. So that means a reduction in dog control and bylaw enforcement for that allocation. Moving to building inspection, that is an increase of 61,000 and change. And again, that is due to a more accurate allocation of wages. So this would be for the planning manager and planning clerk, where their remuneration is being more accurately broken out between building inspection and planning. So building inspection function will see an increase based on that more accurate allocation. The revised total of budgeted costs of this function now show that there is a recurring deficit for this area, which means this will likely need to trigger a rate review in 2026 to be able to determine what rates are needed to break even with this function. In the meantime, there is funds in the building inspection operating reserve to fund the operating shortfall, and that has been built into the budget to balance that function. Emergency management, a net increase of 12,700, and that is partially due to the 1/3 of the community service manager's salary now being allocated to this function, whereas in prior years, none of that salary was allocated there at all. So again, this is a step forward in making sure that we're accurately allocating our costs appropriately. It's also, there's a partially offset by a reduction in the EOC training budget due to a grant-funded initiative that was in 2025. That was one time. So that will be gone for 2026. For public works services, so this is the non-water and sewer aspect of the operations department. So that function, there is a slight increase of 0.7% or approximately $7,000. And there are some ups and downs, and I'll go over them briefly here. When we budget for outside staffing and the costs associated with our outside staff, how we budget for that is we budget by position so that we make sure that we have all of the costs and benefits associated with all of those positions. And then we allocate that total out by percentage to the various programs and functions that the operations staff works with. Prior to 2026, there was a public works foreman whose salary was not on an hourly allocation basis, but it was a fixed allocation between water, sewer, and public works general. Starting in 2026, that position has been eliminated and is now going to be a water wastewater 2 position, which will have an allocated by hour allocation of wages. So what that means going forward is many of the programs that you will see show a higher budget for the labor component for those programs, but there is a lower amount of salary by the same total amount in the unallocated area. So it's just because of that switch, we have an additional person who is hourly allocated rather than a fixed allocation, but the grand total is the same. For Public Works Common Services, there's a net decrease of 42,000 approximately, due mostly to increased internal cost recovery from the water and sewer functions to Public Works. And again, as it's also due to reduced unallocated wage costs that I was just talking about a moment ago. For shop maintenance, an increase of about 11,000 due to increased allocation of staff wages for the shop itself and increased costs for the janitorial contract that started. In our fleet area, this is the area where all of our costs for our fleet, for fuel, insurance, and repairs, they get coded here. But what also gets coded here is an internal recovery from the charge out of those vehicles to the various functions, whether it's snow clearing, water, sewer, all of the different programs get a charge based on hourly usage of these vehicles, and the combined credit or the offset to that is the credit that goes against the fleet. So that's why there is a net credit. So it's an actual net revenue situation. And it's increasing because we are constantly looking at our rates to try and make them as accurate as possible so that it covers not only the actual costs of maintaining these vehicles, but also to put money away for their replacement so that it is fully funded through these internal charge outs. So we're getting closer to that, but that's why that's increasing. And hopefully within a couple of years, we'll be in that position where that net amount will more than cover actual costs plus replace the vehicles as well. For transportation, that is everything road related. And what we're looking at there is an increase mostly due to, again, allocation of outside staff wages and increased street sweeping costs. That contract will likely go up next year based on the results of this last year with the contractor that was being used. It's partially offset by a reduction in asphalt patching. Council might recall in the 2025 budget, there was a one-time increase for large-scale asphalt patching due to available tax money from a canceled capital project during the budget meeting. It was in the neighborhood of 141,000 was allocated to large-scale asphalt patching. So rather than a sharp reduction back to historical levels, we are suggesting that like we continue with large-scale asphalt patching, but in this case to about 128,000, not 141,000, so slightly reduced. But this enables the city to continue doing those large-scale patching rather than small little pieces here and there. And again, that's all tax funded. Storm drainage, an increase of about $8,800 due to increased allocation of outside staff wages. Community banners and Christmas lights, same situation for $4,000 increase. Moving to water, an overall decrease in water expenses of 3% or $29,700. And the reasons for that are water common services. There's a reduction due to decreased unallocated outside staff wages, what I talked about before, but also decreased water consulting costs. There was a consulting budget in the water area that is not needed, and that was able to be brought down. For water treatment, an increase of 17,000 and change due to increased allocation of outside staff wages, as well as increased costs for materials and parts for the treatment plant. The operating costs for the treatment plant have been escalating over the years, and a budget increase is definitely warranted in that area. For water distribution, a decrease of about $13,000, and that is due to the reduced need for water meter purchases. The city has a large stock of water meters right now, and we do not need to continue budgeting large amounts for those purchases, so we can bring that down. It's just not necessary to keep that budget that high for that. So altogether, that explains why there is a net reduction this year in water, which is not normal. Normally, there is an increase. For sewer, it's the opposite, where there's approximately a 3% increase overall. For sewer common services, there is a reduction due to decreased unallocated outside staff wages and reduced sewer consulting costs. So the same as water, there was consulting costs that don't need to be budgeted as high as they were in the past, so that can come down. For sewer collection, an increase of about $6,000 due to increased allocation of staff wages. For the Adair primary treatment site, an increase of about $14,700, and that's due mostly to electricity and facility parts and material costs escalating over the years. So there is a recommended increase there. The same for the Thomas Hayes treatment site. That is approximately $31,000, and that is, again, electricity and material costs have been going up, and we have not been budgeting enough in that area for that facility. For our spray irrigation area, an increase of about $12,000, and that is due, again, to increased allocation of outside wages and parts and materials. So overall, a modest increase of 3% for the sewer area. There is no recommendation for a sewer fee increase for 2026. The need has not been shown as necessary yet. I'm sure that time will come soon, but we've had some surpluses in the past recently for this fund. So no fee increases are being recommended for sewer at this point. For solid waste, this is the expense side of the garbage and residential collection. So an increase of 4.9% has been put in the budget, and that's about $18,000. The existing 5-year contract with our garbage contractor is coming to an end in the spring. It is anticipated that the new contract will be substantially higher, being that we've had the same contract for 5 years with the existing contractor. So that is going out for tender in the spring. So an increase has been allocated that is higher than inflation just for that purpose. And maybe we might not need it, but it's there in case we do. The goal with solid waste is that we want to be we want to break even with this function. We want to make sure that what our costs are, that's exactly what we're going to recover from our residents. What we're seeing right now is an actual surplus. So I'm suggesting that we reduce that surplus down to zero slowly over time. So what we're seeing here, the 2025 budgeted surplus was around 23,000. For 26, it's more like 9,000. So what's happening, our costs are going up, but our fees are not purposely, just so that we can move into that break-even area. It's really something the city shouldn't be making a profit on. It should be an in and an out. For cemetery, there's an increase warranted about 7.2%, or it's only about $4,600, and that was based on the joint budget presented at the joint council meeting on December 2nd. So again, that's the city's share of cemetery. For planning services, there is an increase of about $49,000 due to a more accurate allocation of salary and wage costs for the planning manager and the planning clerk. Also due to increased costs for engineering consultants reviewing development applications. We have noticed that we do not have enough in the budget for required consulting review of development applications. For Parks and Recreation Services, on the expense side, we're seeing a slight increase or slight decrease of $1,600 and change. And that's due mostly to a reduction in operating costs for the fairgrounds to better align with past actual costs. And again, this is Armstrong's share only, and this was approved by joint council earlier this month. This is somewhat offset by increases in the pool and the arena functions, but overall it's almost a break even. It's the same as it was before. For museum and heritage, an increase of about $2,800 due to increased museum building insurance premiums and an increased budget for the heritage grants from the new heritage policy that council approved earlier this year. So the costs for heritage grants are shown here, but the funding for that is shown in the revenue area. There is approximately $20,000 from the previous heritage grant program that the city is holding in deferred revenue. So that will be transferred to reserves as needed until it is gone. So at this point, what we're budgeting for heritage grants is a net zero effect to the overall budget until that money has been exhausted. And so far, we have not received any applications under the new policy. For debt servicing, a small increase, and that is for accrued interest relating to the new borrowing that is anticipated at the end of 2026 for the water reservoir project. There was an amount in the 2025 budget because it was anticipated that that is when the first borrowing was going to be, but that has been deferred for this year and slightly increased. For transfers to reserves, we are seeing a noticeable increase, and there's a number of reasons for that. For the roads and drainage reserve, there's a net increase of about $84,000 going into that reserve this year. And that is because of a $134,000 increase from the increased tax levy for infrastructure, minus a $50,000 decrease due to the one-time reallocation of 2024's surplus that was done in 25. That was an amended budget. There's a $14,000 increase for the public works equipment reserve for 2026. A $10,000 increase to the fire reserve, And again, these are necessary in order to enable the planned replacements over the next 5-year planning horizon. There's a $25,000 increase to the Parks and Recreation Reserve. Historically, the only funding that has gone into that reserve on a budgeted point of view is the proceeds of the recreation parcel tax, which is about $47,000 per year. I am suggesting that we increase that by an additional $25,000 and $50,000 in 2027, $75,000 the year after, and $100,000 the year after. And the reason for that, which you'll see shortly, is that the projects that are planned for Parks and Recreation over the next 5 years are substantial, and the reserve is not big enough. There's insufficient funds for the city's share of those projects. So I'm suggesting a gradual increase over time, which is a lot more affordable than all at once. So the first 25,000 increase I'm suggesting for this year.
Can you take a quick question?
Sure.
Is the increase to the Parks and Recreation Reserve coming from a separate fund than the parcel tax?
The increase that I'm talking about is tax funding going there.
Parcel tax stays the same.
Pardon me?
Parcel tax stays the same.
Yes, this is in addition to that. Yeah. There is a $20,000 decrease to the cemetery reserve. I am suggesting that we put a pause on funding the cemetery reserve due to the level that it's at right now and the lack of projects that are on the planning horizon for cemetery. There is definitely sufficient money in there, and we don't need to keep building it. That's my opinion, my recommendation. So a temporary pause on that, it enables $20,000 to be used elsewhere for now. There is a $88,000 increase to the water reserve, as well as a net decrease to the sewer reserve of $123,000, and that is mostly due to a one-time reallocation of the 2024 surplus to the sewer reserve in 2025. So a one-time effect coming off the books. I'm going to pause there and just draw your attention to the total where it says total operating expenses. This particular screenshot that you're looking at has expenses separated between operating and non-operating. And I wanted to show you what the effect is of our total operating expenses. So if we take out our projects and our remittances of taxes to other agencies, we can see what the operating cost is to run the city. So we're looking at going from a $9,964,000 operating budget up to a 10.1 million. So that's approximately 1.7% overall increase for operating. This gives you a bird's eye view of what it costs to operate the city, including debt servicing and transfers to reserves. So that was intentional to separate that, because if you look at the total expenses, that fluctuates substantially, again, because of projects going up and down. So this enables you to see more of the operating side, and it's more stable over time. So remittances of taxes for other agencies, this is the other side of the coin from the revenue side. Again, it's a net zero effect. Projects, we're looking at a 36.6% increase, or about $3 million more in project budget, and we'll go over those shortly, project by project. So I'll stop there and pause for questions.
Councillor Weiner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of questions, I think mostly for Brad. First of all, I noticed that there was an increase to the spray irrigation budget. So just wondering if we've considering reevaluating the cost that maybe what we charge for the use of the spray irrigation.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Weiner. It is something that we have on the horizon. It is part of our operational certificate right now for our primary source of discharge. But the rates have been stagnant for quite some time. And as we look to future budgets, we will be giving consideration to a rate review.
Just a follow-up question with the Tot Lot walking trails. I was just curious if the Armstrong Trail Society has been, anything that's been discussed with them as far as assistance, as far as those trails go?
We've just renewed our agreement with the Armstrong Trail Society. And we've removed some of those focuses on some of the labor aspects of it. But it's something that we do take a look at, but we do have this built in with some finish up work with the contract.
Perfect, thank you.
Counselor Todd?
Just looking at the policing there, do we expect to have like a $400,000 surplus at the end of the year for the policing?
I wouldn't say it's that much. What you're seeing, you know, on that screenshot is there's always a lag in what we pay. It's a 3-month delay.
Oh, so that budget to actual isn't necessarily 3.9, it's not 400 grand.
No,
actual.
no, what you're seeing there, yeah, that I believe is only up to June 30th.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
like for the payments, we pay quarterly. So that would have been the first and second quarters. We just paid today, actually, the third quarter bill, because we're given a long time to pay each one, which is fortunate. We can keep our money longer. Yeah, so that shows only up to June.
Right, because it just looked like a huge chunk of change there, like $500,000.
Yeah, it won't be that big.
Yeah, okay, perfect, thank you.
Counselor Nietzsche, all good up there?
Yeah, Terry, can I ask a question about that parcel tax for Parks and Recreation? I mean, it's the same $20 that we've been charging since the day it was implemented. Obviously escalating costs. We have asset management coming down the pipe, and other things there. Is it time to maybe look at that figure and look to increase it to a kind of a more realistic number, given it's 2025 now?
There definitely could be, yes, it's warranted to look at that $20 parcel tax. On the administrative side, anytime you're dealing with parcel taxes, the community charter is extremely restrictive. Anytime you make changes to parcel taxes as to what a city has to do that, it is much easier and more efficient to just simply raise taxes by that amount rather than the parcel tax. And that's in a sense what we're doing with the additional 25,000 going to that reserve is coming out of general property taxes, not the parcel tax. And again, it's purely because of administrative burden. But we certainly could look at adjusting that parcel tax if council desires in the future.
And the rationale, just so council understands why we went with the parcel tax over the taxation issue, is that it was more of an issue of fairness and balance between business and the commercial rates and residential rates. And we thought, well, it's just it's more fair, just charge every like head tax basically on every parcel, as opposed to the commercial having to pay, you know, the 2.5 or whatever, the 2.1 times or whatever it is, the difference. And so that's why we went with that parcel tax. But, you know, I appreciate that if it's an administrative burden to increase, but I don't know, I still like the fairness idea of that to supplement. I don't mind doing a little bit of a blend where we still have some increased from taxation going into those reserves. I think that's good, but I'm just wondering if we should also consider that increase as well, but something to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just maybe, unfortunately, going back a step to the revenue side, that triggered a thought for me. As far as when we saw the revenue as far as taxation versus utilities, I'm curious because my understanding is that for taxation, you can, if you're 55 and up, I believe, or maybe 60 and up, you can defer your taxes, but possibly not the utility side. And if any thought goes into maybe making that balanced or how that might work for them.
Yes, the deferral program is a provincial program. So seniors, and it's not just seniors, there's also one for families with children. There are two different deferred programs, and they're both provincial. Anyone on that program, the revenue change, we don't see a revenue change at all. The province reimburses us for that. It's the province that essentially loans the money on behalf of the taxpayer. So deferred taxes really doesn't play any effect. It doesn't affect our budget at all. It doesn't affect our cash flow at all.
Just as far as the billing for utilities versus taxation, I guess, as far as the size of the pie, so to speak, if they're not able to defer that, and just as a consideration as far as the way we collect the money.
I see what you're getting at now. Sorry. The number of deferred files that we have is relatively low. I don't know the exact number, but it's almost negligible of how many taxpayers actually make use of that program. Most people shy away from that and don't want to do that because they don't want a ballooning debt later on. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it affects much when you're looking at user fees versus taxes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions. We'll carry on.
Thank you. So we will now move to an exciting page that I'm test driving with council here this year. So I will explain this. There is a growing trend in the local government world to begin budgeting by program rather than just by department. And budgeting by department is the traditional way of doing things, but with more and more demands for enhanced transparency from the public and from council, there is now a new thing. Well, it's not really that new, but it's still kind of coming up in the ranks by budgeting by program. Every department has a number of different programs in it. For example, corporate services could have elections as being one program, records management being another, freedom of information being another, communications being another. There could easily be 4 or 5 different programs of services that we offer just in that one department. Finance would be similar. There would be audit, financial planning, accounts payable, payroll, information technology. There's quite a few. Currently, we do not capture costs and revenues by program except for operations. That is the only department that we do that for right now. However, we don't necessarily budget by program. So this is a presentation that I'm showing you as a pilot presentation just to give you a snapshot of what it costs to provide all of the operations programs that we offer to the public. It also shows direct revenue associated with each one of those programs and the resulting tax subsidy. So scrolling down, you can see that most of those top ones are tax funded, but then of course, water and sewer is completely fee driven and not tax funded whatsoever. So when you look at operations as a total, we're looking at approximately $3.1 million in operating costs for 2026. Of that 3.1 million, 37.1% is the tax subsidization for operations costs. The rest is direct user revenue. So I don't have any written explanations for any of these individual line items, but I just wanted to show you that if council is interested in seeing this expanded to other departments starting in 2027, we can start building that out if you so desire. But if this level of detail is indifferent to you, we can carry on with how we've been doing it. But again, it's a test drive.
I'm curious, does that come with an increase in your wages?
What it would mean for the other departments is that we would have to start recording our costs by program and budgeting accordingly. So it would mean some estimating, but it would mean also staff keeping track of how many hours they spend on accounts payable versus audit versus other programs. So it would be, yeah, a bit of work to do, but once it's set up, I think the information that it provides council is probably revolutionary compared to the old way of doing things.
Councilor Dropla.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say, I really liked being able to look at the same numbers from kind of 2 different places, right? Or 2 different vantage points. So I really like it.
Accountants get excited about weird things.
Actually, I know we've had conversations about a lot of the numbers that I'm seeing here. It's really nice if we can produce them like this and not have to go searching for them or bother staff for them. So yeah, I would be in support of that myself. Did you have a comment, Councilor Nietzsche? Okay, carrying on.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to projects now. So this one is going to be a little bit harder to see on the big screen. But what we'll do is focus on the left-hand side of the anticipated cost of these projects. And then if you want, we can scroll to the right to see where it's being funded from. So for 2026, we can go over them one by one here quickly. So these are in alphabetical order. So starting in cemetery.
Sorry, Councilor Drapeau.
Sorry to interrupt. These are all currently budgeted, right?
Some are in the budget previously and others are new. So for 2026, any new projects that you're seeing there have a project request form following this page. There's about a dozen individual sheets. So what we're doing for any new projects going forward, we have designed a new application form or showing rationale for projects, and it gets vetted through the CAO and goes to council. So you will see about 12 new ones. So those are in here, yes.
Right, but the numbers are already reflected in the budget presented, or would they be added on top of the budget presented?
They're already included in what's being presented. For the ones that you're seeing here, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. So for cemetery, the GIS system, this is a project that the township has been wanting to do for the last couple of years. It received endorsement from Joint Council earlier this month. So this, what you're seeing there for the 14,000 is the city's share of that project, and that's being funded from the cemetery reserve. Same for the new columbarium. That was in the budget for 2025, but it was not done. It is being carried over. So that is a repeat. Community services, this is from 2025. So this is the leftover money from the Indigenous Engagement grant funding. So this will carry over to 2026. We have a new project from Community Services. This is OH&S related, and it is an AED for the shop as well as a patient stretcher. So these are pieces of equipment that are necessary for our ongoing occupational health and safety, and that is being budgeted at $6,000 coming from taxation. The next is mine, finance. This is IT hardware replacements. Approximately $11,000 is being carried over from 2025 from hardware purchases that were not done in 2025. So this is designed to replace 3 laptop computers and upgraded docking stations. And if there is leftover money from that, additional purchases such as monitors. So this is not new money, it's carried over money from taxation from 2025 that will carry over. One down is the jointly owned building appraisal. This is the city's share of that consultation with Municipal Insurance Association. Joint Council approved this. We're anticipating to use approximately $6,000 from the MIA risk management grant, leaving the rest to be funded from taxation. The Fire Department Next Generation 911 project is a grant-funded project that's being carried over. It was a 25 project that has been delayed. For operations, we have the backhoe replacement clocked at $200,000. This is, again, not a new vehicle. It's a new vehicle, but a replacement of an existing one. This was in the 2026 year in the last 5-year plan, so it's staying put for 2026. The next one is the pedestrian crosswalk signals for Wood Avenue and PV Road. This is a new project, so there is a separate sheet following showing rationale for that project, and this is the funding on this one is coming from the Roads and Drainage Reserve. So this would be for 2 pedestrian activated signals for 2 different locations. Again, for operations, these are shop facility improvements for 2024. For 24,000. Sorry, that's coming from the building reserve. And if we scroll down, I can't remember exactly what this is for. Maybe Brad, if you want to just outline what that's for, I have to find it.
Yeah, the facility improvements is to update the staff lunchroom and accommodations. It's an aged facility in the Quonset hut and some security improvements for the building as well.
So that is a new request this year. The next one is Highland Park Playground Equipment. This is, it's to finish up the existing project that started in 2025. It's mostly finished. So the 15,000 is to deal with landscaping, restoration, and the final touches to be planned in the spring of 2025. So that's coming from the Parks and Recreation Reserve being carried over. The next item is the design, the pre-design for the Okanagan Street Bridge replacement for 100,000. And this is in relation to the engineering assessment that was done earlier this year for the Okanagan Street Bridge during the spring freshet. So this 100,000 will provide, I believe, Class C cost estimates for the replacement of the bridge, which would be scheduled for the following year in 2027. So the next one is the flagship project for 2026, so Pleasant Valley Boulevard North. This is phase 1 of the Cary overall project. It was in the 2026 budget previously at 3.5 million. It is now being proposed at 4.4 million based on Class A cost estimates from the city's engineers. This particular project went out for RFP this afternoon. So it has gone out to market. So this is a big milestone. So Chantel, if you can scroll to the right a little bit, then we can see where the funding is coming from for this. This is going to be a combination of, well, I guess you can't see the headings, but 1,730,000 coming from the Roads and Drainage Reserve, and the other portion of it is coming from the provincial funding, which is the Growing Communities Grant. This council might recall we received over $2 million from the Growing Communities funding. This is using the remainder of that funding. It has established quite a bit of interest. It has grown substantially because of the amount of money there. So we're using all of it to fund this project. So that is definitely a huge help to making this a reality. So beneath that one, no worries. Okay, so this is this next one is the rail trail connection pre-design. So this is a carryover from 2025 for 40,000. So that hadn't happened yet in 2025, so it's being carried over.
Are you okay with quick questions? or
Sure.
Would you rather wait?
Go for it.
Might as well now, eh? How are you doing? So is that just where it enters into town? Is that just that place where it becomes city property?
I believe so. Do you want to?
Yeah, the pre-design is looking at trailhead parking right east of the hydro substation. We've had discussions with hydro. We have a preliminary design, and it's just going through those channels right now. And so that will look at the design of that infrastructure and then connecting it all the way up to Mill. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. The next one is the storm drainage CCTV and condition assessment. That was budgeted at a lower amount for 2026. It is once again in 2026, but at a much higher budget. It was determined that it wasn't going to be enough in its current form. So 350,000 is being recommended, and a number of different funding sources for this particular one. We are hoping to use the remainder of our provincial funding from the Bill 44. This was the housing initiative funding that the city received. We're using that money for the DCC bylaw and a few other operating projects, but the remainder of it would go towards this. It's also being funded out of the budget carryover reserve because of the amount that was tax funded for this project from 2025 it wasn't used, it's being carried over. And the rest of it, 237,000 coming from the Roads and Drainage Reserve. So that is proposed to carry on for 2026. The next line is the total of all of the Parks and Recreation Commission projects. So this is 173,000 and change, and it is coming from the Parks and Recreation Reserve. Following that is the DCC bylaw, which was a 2025 project being carried over. It was started late this year, but it is being finalized in 2026 from that grant money that I was speaking about. And also from that grant funding source, the completion of the subdivision servicing bylaw. This was started this year, but not yet finished, so it will be finished next year. Moving down, we have a small amount of money that we are suggesting for the Adair site improvements. And Mr. Ackerman, would you mind explaining what those were?
Yeah, through your worship, the Adair site improvements is a dissolved oxygen sensor system, and that basically helps us manage our BODs in cell 1 and cell 2. That piece of equipment has aged out, and so we're looking to replace that so we can maximize our efficiency from our blower building.
Are we putting in a whole new piping system in heads, or are we just replacing heads at that amount?
Just replacing heads at the lagoons at 1 and 2. The existing piping infrastructure between the blower building over to those cells is still intact and in good shape. It's just the sensors are due for replacement.
And one line below is the completion of the cell 3 desludging and sludge removal. What is being proposed is a bump up to that budget to finalize it and also to deal with the sludge removal. 555,000 coming from the sewer reserve. The next project is a carryover for about the flocculation pilot project for sewer treatment. It didn't get started in 2025 due to a number of delays with regard to the provincial requirements and the contractor who was doing the pilot project. So that is being carried over to next year. And that is to be funded out of the sewer grant that the city has already received. That's being held held in reserve. So we are using money from that grant to pay for that. The next project is the Hutley sewer main restoration. This is just the design and planning. So this is a sewer main that has had issues near the Thomas Hayes site. And again, Mr. Ackerman, if you wouldn't mind explaining that one.
Yeah, so this project has been on the books for the last, I guess, 2 years, looking to the best suitable way to deal with this one. And this has 2 of our force mains coming from our Adair site out to Thomas Hayes that suffered some removal of cover fill over top of them down at Hutley Ravine on Hutley Creek. And we're looking to reestablish that cover and go through the environmental process to undertake and replace those lines at a deeper depth.
Thank you. The next project is one that is recurring annually for the near future, and that is the continuation of relining existing sewer pipes. Approximately $400,000 is budgeted per year out of the sewer reserve to do that. And again, the purpose of this project is when conditions are appropriate, relining the interior of the pipe rather than replacing the pipe in its entirety, much more affordable. The next project has various improvements at Thomas Hayes for 108,000. And once again, I'll just ask for your help, Brad.
Through your worship, the improvements at Thomas Hayes is looking at an update to our chlorine gas system, which is part of our secondary treatment with a cost of $35,000 for that. Variable frequency drive replacement at a cost of $18,000 and a pump and motor replacement. This is ongoing asset management. We ask a lot of our equipment out at Thomas Hayes for the spray irrigation program, and as a result, we are seeing a shortened lifespan on some of that equipment.
The project below that is phase 1 of the water reservoir and supply line project. So this is a 3-year project in the financial plan. So this is phase 1, year 1 at 3.5 million approximately, to be funded jointly by a partial first draw from the loan of $8.7 million that is being proposed to be borrowed. This would be draw number 1 out of 3. And the remainder of that cost would come from the water reserve. So the Township of Smalimshine's portion of this project is being budgeted as an operating revenue in water as far as their share of the ongoing debt servicing for the borrowing component of this project. So if we're borrowing for 30 years, then the recovery from the township would be covering those 30 years and would mirror that same time frame. So that's why that's not being shown here as a funding source. It's being shown as a revenue annually in the water operating budget. The following project is new. It is the 10-year dam review. It is not a capital project. So every 10 years, the province requires that the spillway have a comprehensive review, and that is pegged to be approximately $75,000. And that is being purported to come out of water revenue for 2026. And finally, the purchase of new excavation shoring equipment for purposes of water and sewer repairs for $35,000 being split 50-50 from the water and sewer reserves. So this is not a replacement of existing equipment. This is new that we don't have currently. So in total, a little over $11 million in project, of which only $7,875 is coming from property taxes, and the rest from reserves, grants, and some from borrowing. So the tax hit on the initial cost is relatively low for 2026. So we can move to 2027. So starting in 2027, we are budgeting an allotted 15,000 placeholder every year for miscellaneous IT hardware replacements coming from taxation each year. We don't know exactly what that will be in 2027, but again, it's a placeholder, and if we don't need it, then we can carry that forward for future years. And following that is the actual construction for the Okanagan Street Bridge at an estimated cost of $2.2 million to be paid mostly through the federal gas tax reserve. So the intent here is that in 2027, we would use all of the gas tax reserve money that is in that reserve for this project and zero it out. And then the rest would come from the roads and drainage reserve. Municipalities in BC have been pressured by the province to start using their gas tax money more frequently rather than letting it build because of requirements from the federal government where they don't want to see ballooning reserves. So this particular project is an ideal use for that fund. And if all goes well, 2027 we'll use all of our existing gas tax money. And then we will get more again starting in 2028. But we can at least follow the advice of the province by using it in a timely manner. The sidewalk tractor replacement, this was in the budget for 2027 previously, so this isn't new. $285,000 to replace the existing tractor. Parks and Recreation Commission projects totaling $168,000 and change for 2027, again being funded from the Parks and Rec Reserve. Some more improvements for the Adair treatment site for pump and motor for $100,000, followed by the completion of the Hutley sewer main restoration at $200,000. And again, the annual $400,000 for the relining of sewer pipes, as well as design for water filtration. In 2028, we have that budgeted. So for 2027, this is the official design for that, done a year in advance. And followed by the phase 2 of the water reservoir and supply line for $3 million to be funded completely by borrowing. So this would be the second draw on that loan of $8.7 million. So a total of $6.5 million in project costs for 27. So for 2028, we'll scroll down to the next page. So again, annual $15,000 for computer replacements. The fire department engine 1 replacement is scheduled for 2028, and this was endorsed by Joint Council. So this is the full gross cost of that estimated cost of that engine replacement. And the reason why we do that is because the city is the one who does the purchase of that vehicle. So we need to budget the entire amount and show Spallumachine 60% recovery as a funding source, which you can see to the right there. The 834,000 would come from as a cash payment from the township to reimburse us for their share. So as was mentioned to joint council, there will likely be a request to council soon to have an early approval to begin the speccing process for this, because it will likely take several years of speccing and ordering for it to be ready in time for 2028. It cannot be deferred beyond that. It will time out in 2028. The replacement of a heavy-duty flat deck truck for Public Works for 120,000 coming from the Public Works Reserve. And some more projects for Parks and Recreation for 170,000 for 2028, followed by the annual $400,000 sewer line relining. And phase 3, the final phase of the Water Reserve and Supply Line project for 3.7. 2029, we have 15,000 coming for the hardware replacements. We also have hardware replacement scheduled for the fire department at 17,000 with an appropriate recovery from Spallumachine. We also have a new vehicle that's been budgeted. It was included in the budget previously, but it has been now deferred to 2029. It's the Wildland/Quick Attack truck for 250,000. This was discussed substantially by joint council earlier this month. It's in 2029. More projects for Parks and Recreation, and again, sewer lining. The water filtration project has been recosted. It is expected to be substantial. The placeholder that is now being placed on this particular project is 15 million. With 4 million coming from our own water reserve and 11 million from anticipated grants. So that is speculative. We do not have anything approved yet. So this is a project that I think would fit very well with the federal gas tax strategic priorities fund. It would check all the boxes for that particular funding source. So that is the desire, is to submit an application for that, for this project. Again, this is a very high level estimate. It's pretty hard to pinpoint what that's going to cost. And finally, for 2030, we have a few projects there in the 5th year of the capital plan. Pretty self-explanatory. There are more projects for Parks and Recreation. So in total, for the 5-year period, we have the city's share of Parks and Recreation projects approaching $1 million for 5 years. So hence the reason why we needed to bolster our reserves going forward, and that slight increase every year to build up that reserve to be able to pay for these projects. So in total for 5 years, we're just under $40 million in projects. And I can pause for questions if you like.
When it comes to doing your budgeting and doing your plans, like your 5-year plans, how does it work to have, like, for instance, the sewer pipes, the same amount every year for so many years? Do you just get less work done every year, or does that just get adjusted as it gets closer to when the work gets done? Like from your accounting point of view, how do you manage that?
It's basically a placeholder every year. So whatever 400,000 buys you for that year is what we do. Might want to expand on that.
Yeah, so this program stems out of the sanitary CCTV condition assessment that we did a couple of years ago. And it outlined, it's basically a 7-year program of pipe that qualifies for cure in place pipelining rather than open excavation. So we have a priority list that we've been working off, and we've kind of basically the reports identified about a $400,000 a year budget will get us to that total length of pipe that is eligible for relining. So that's what we've been working off for that. As we get past that, we'll go back and reevaluate where things are at with the camera condition assessment and the next level of priority and risk ones, and then kind of reevaluate a budget for a next phase of that work as we get down the road. And this ties into kind of the similar work that we're looking to do with the stormwater condition assessments and lining works.
So do some of the, like, are you doing your priority setting on the pipes, the ones that look like they're gonna cause the biggest problems as soon as? That's more expensive, do you think? Like, is that, are you kind of working down to your less expensive? Is that the hope, or is that a budgetary runaway?
We work off the highest level of risk first, the category 4, category 5 defect pipe. And those are varying sections in length. And we try and maximize what we can do out of that list each year. And but it's kind of mapped out for us in that condition assessment. We just revisit that each year and say, okay, current market conditions based on our last year's contract, we anticipate we'll be able to do X amount of meters of pipe in the coming year and then adjust from there. So we're confident that at the end of the 7 years, we'll have that list whittled away at, and then we'll go to the 2 and 3 and hope the 2 and 3 list haven't deteriorated into a category 4 by then. But
Not seeing a ton more questions. I'm sorry, we won't be taking any questions tonight from the audience. Nothing, Councilor Darpley, all good? All right.
Okay, the pages that follow are individual project funding request sheets for all of the new projects. I don't think we need to dwell on these too long here. The rationale was already described as we were going through them. But this shows council the new protocol that we have for project funding, and that department heads, as they request project funding, it is done this way with rationale being put on the form as well as proposed funding sources. And that way the CAO is able to vet each request before it goes to council, and which Mr. Seibel has vetted and reviewed each one of these for presentation to council. So again, I don't think we need to go over each one unless council desires to.
I did have a couple of questions, and some of them are really minimal things, but on the project number 2 with the pedestrian activated solar crossing lights, we were advised by the RCMP at their last visit not to use solar because somebody's just going to steal our solar panels. That seems to be a frequent occurrence, as they noted. So I don't know if that's something we've considered, but certainly I would like to not have that happen to us if possible. And then one comment, I know it's very little bit of money for Mr. Smith's budget, but a stretcher. You want to explain that one to me?
So there's a couple of pieces of equipment that we require to meet WorkSafe BC regulations. One is a stretcher, and then additional equipment that's required for covering the patient and the equipment. So that's coming in at $3,000, just over. And so we've searched out, there's a couple of different suppliers. Unfortunately, it's not cheap to get this equipment. We did look at buying secondhand even. But this is part of the requirements, and also then additionally to the requirements of having it, we also have to looking at being compact as well, particularly at this time of year when the crew are going up in their snow conditions. They have a limited amount of space that they can carry equipment within the existing Kubota system that we have. So we need a split mechanism stretcher that allows us to fold it up and compact it.
Just given my practical experience, if you send 2 people up to the lakes and one gets hurt, one person's not putting them on a stretcher and loading them. So I think there's quite an oversight. I know it's not very much money, but it's not practical in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's one of the conditions that WorkSafe BC has put forward to us. So we recognize that during the winter months that we may be limited in our capacity. We do have the ability to rely on other services, but we do have to plan to act upon it and have the appropriate training and equipment in place.
Yeah, I'm not going to let that one go. I'm a dog with a bone on that one. And I'd be more than happy to help you with an argument based on that. That's, to me, seems just ridiculous. I know it's not very much money. Okanagan Street Bridge design, I don't know how much these things cost in any way, shape or form, but $100,000 for to do the base design. Talking to the company that put the two last bridges in, it didn't cost $100,000 to put the bridges in, and the last one was done in 2019. So to spend $100,000 on an engineer to figure out what we're going to do, to me just seems excessive. And then I look at a $2.2 million Class D estimate price tag now for a 12-foot long bridge that only services one business in our community. There's got to be a better route and a better way to save money. I got a real problem with that one also. And it's not a staff issue. I want to make sure you're aware of that. It's just wisely spending money. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. I think I had a couple others. I left my notes in my office. Got no problem with all of our sewer projects. I know those things are required to be done. Is there grants available for our dam safety reviews? Are we aware? I know it needs to be done. It's another cost of downloading from the government onto us, so I was curious.
Currently, there are no grants available to pursue for the dam safety annual audit, the 10-year audit. Some of the grant available programs out there are for improvements outside of the regulatory requirements.
And then given the condition of our Thomas Hayes water holding facility out there, we know we have a dam slough as it is. Is this gonna make us do upgrades to it immediately, or does it have that potential to cost us a whole lot of money?
The requirements for the 10-year safety inspection does include the reservoir out at Thomas Hayes. So that is going to form part of that. All of our infrastructure out there does have certain level of defects, and that's natural. It's just capturing that and being able to mitigate it in that 10-year dam safety review, and then make those recommendations for ongoing operational, either capital improvements or ongoing maintenance to mitigate that. So I don't anticipate it's going to be a huge snowball. We already do have plans in place and have identified liner replacement and that type of work for Thomas Hayes. So that is dealing with that little repair that was done a couple of years ago is already kind of factored into that. So the risk is low, but it will be reviewed.
And was that noted 10 years ago when the last assessment was done, or is this new damage or new slough, for a better word?
It wasn't noted in the last inspection, but when that was identified, the same consultant was brought out to do a review as part of that mitigation work on it. So it will be brought into this next cycle, and it forms part of our annual dam inspection that we do.
All right, and my last little piece, I had the question about the excavation shoring. It's a fairly specific ask, unless we have a misdetailed here. 66 feet.
So it's shoring more geared towards the work that our crews do on a regular basis. We do have the unfortunate circumstance of having some utilities in town that are extremely deep. And to go in and do the repair work on those requires a substantial excavation in order to do that safely. This shoring is 66 inches in diameter, and it's galvanized half circles that lock together and form a column up, so we can minimize our excavation with the utilization of the vac truck and actually just suck down on top of the utilities that we're looking to service and get down to that depth safely for our staff to go in and make the repairs. Minimizes the cleanup and associated damage afterwards. Sometimes a simple water leak in someone's driveway ends up to be a very large excavation when it doesn't necessarily need to have to be with this shoring equipment, and then that meets our requirements for work safe for going into excavations as well.
And have we used this shoring in the past couple of years?
We haven't. This is a newer product that's hit the market that kind of targets those type of utility repairs versus the longer shoring sections that civil contractors will use. This allows us to get on top of a fire hydrant and have staff go down and be able to service that, in keeping that excavation to a nice workable space.
Thank you. That's all the questions I had. Councillor Todd, did you have a question?
Just a quick one, just about the lining the pipes. Is it always cheaper to do it that way? Isn't it? Is there ever a case where you just dig it up and put a new pipe in and make it cheaper? That's $200 million or $2 million over, 5 years.
Yeah, the cure in place pipelining is a cheaper methodology just because you can go in and reline that pipe and get basically another, I'm going to say 60 plus years out of that pipe once it's lined. The only time it gets to be more cost effective is when you're doing a complete street revite and you're going to have to do the water, storm, and the road, and then that makes more sense to go in and you have to do that full excavation anyways. When you're just going in to do your sanitary line, if you were to dig that up, you're doing asphalt, road base, all of that stuff. So it is a substantial savings there, especially in areas where we're not likely to see increased density and where the utilities are already currently sized appropriately for future growth. It's a great tool for your municipalities to replace infrastructure without having major disruptions to traffic flows. Over the last couple of years, the disruptions to traffic has been minimal. When the crews come in and do the work, they're in and out in week and a half, and life goes back on. We'll look to grow this program to our storm system as well as a means to deal with some of that infrastructure without having to bring in excavators and do large scale construction.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have to ask a question first, because I don't recall, did we know that there was going to be lights at Highland Park and Wood Avenue and PV and Armstrong Elementary, or did I miss that somewhere, or did it come to us?
That's been kind of brought onto the radar in consultation with some of the traffic engineers as we've looked at some of the safety reviews, some feedback we've had from the public, some conversations with the RCMP as well. And so it is, it's an,
So just to
Yeah.
I'm not criticizing that we don't need them, for sure. I was just wondering, the one at Highland Park Elementary School and Wood Avenue, has that been deemed a higher priority than Park Drive and Adair, and Wood Avenue? Or is there other work contemplated there? That seems to be a very busy and often complained about crosswalk, more so than I hear about coming across to the fairgrounds.
Yeah, so we are contemplating some other options to deal with the crossings at Wood and Adair, just as a means to slow traffic down and increase pedestrian and driver safety. So we've earmarked two. We've identified two potential locations. As we look at some of these other options, we may adjust, but we are looking to add one to each of those school zones for 2026 if approved.
Thank you. I wasn't complaining. I was just wondering.
Thank you. Just to bring everybody in the loop with the question that His Worship just asked was related to options for the items that are beyond the 2026, as an example, the bridge design and assessment stuff, or any of the other ones that are noted here. Certainly, with any of the projects, if there's a question or further work that council would like us to do, especially on the ones that are in 27 to 30, certainly we can have that conversation to talk about what that looks like and what information you would like to see. So tonight would be appropriate in that regard, to have that the discussion, just so that we know what we're dealing with. as an example, one of the things that we do need to deal with tonight, and we can do that later when we get to this point, is a specific resolution related to the PV North project, just because of the increased cost from what is in the budget versus what our Class A says. With the RFP going out to date, the closure isn't until the end of January, so we have a little bit of time, but it would be appropriate to get early budget approval for the new budget number so that we can bring it forward to the January 12th council meeting to get endorsed, so that when the RFP closes, if everything's in alignment, we can just carry forward as opposed to having to come back to get further approvals, which would then delay the start and so on and so forth. So, but we can deal with that later. But as it relates to any of the projects, we can certainly have those conversations now about timing.
Is it, or do we have a little ways to go yet? I just see Steve looking a little peaked over there, and I'm wondering if this is a good time to have a little snack. I think I got enough for everybody. Are you saying yes? That's okay? You try telling all the, you try telling all the kids no.
Thank you.
None for you, Councillor Nietzsche. Southern. Yeah, I'm in the southern already over there.
Just get everybody to stop talking.
Yeah, good enough. Well, I am a cheap drunk. I don't know if this is actually count.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. Well, a little pick us up for everybody, except for Councillor Nietzsche,
You
unfortunately.
can't have one anyway.
All right, well, with the list of proposed projects, did anybody want to have anything to say about any of those before we sort of approve them in principle moving forward? I think some of them do require a little bit more discussion from my perspective, particularly that Okanagan Street Bridge. And now I guess we have the option to defer that and have staff bring us back options or other options and et cetera, right?
Mhm.
So to me, that's a big hit for something that's questionable how much use it gets. Comments? Councilor Todd?
No, I'll chime in on there. I totally agree with you, Your Worship. I think that it just seems like for such a short span, it just seems really excessive. I don't know if we're having ultra conservative estimates from the engineers on a Class D estimate level for that or not, but I hate to tie up that much money for that type of project. I think I'd like to see a little bit more research go into that by staff before we move forward with that project in particular.
Thank you, Councilor Nietzsche. Councilor Todd, you want? Oh, so Councilor Todd says exactly the same thing. Councilor Draft, do you want to comment? Oh, thumbs up, same thing there. So do we require a motion then to sort of defer that project, or I don't know how this works at this, in the committee of the whole meeting?
Thank you, Worship. So the intention from the resolution that's on the report is that the committee of a whole is recommending endorsement to council. So if there's any changes that we want to make, we can do that. And then those resolutions would precede the report resolution in terms of what goes forward. So if council's wanting to have the Okanagan Street Bridge design paused or removed pending further information. A resolution to that effect is what we would need.
All right, then, I guess I'm more than happy to make that motion. Chantel, I presume you have something there that will work for us? Yes, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it, but for discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's, we don't have very many industry in Armstrong, and if that bridge being done is required to keep the chicken plant going, I'd hate to see it canceled, but maybe just reevaluated or another kind of bridge at it or something like that. But would you mind repeating the recommendation that you made?
I believe the recommendation is just that this piece, the committee of the whole is not going forward and staff will bring us back some options. Correct? Yeah.
In essence, yes, your
Yeah.
worship, a motion made to recommend to council from the committee of the whole that this part of the budget as presented be deferred pending further information from staff.
Thank you. Councillor Todd.
Can we put a, like a priority time frame on that so that it comes back as quick as is humanly possible? I don't know how busy everybody is. I'm sure they're very busy, but they know how busy they are. So, I mean, as it goes in the top of the pile, perhaps. I don't know how that works.
Thank you, Worship, and Brad be able to provide a little bit of insight. I don't think it's unreasonable to try and get something within the first quarter because all we're talking about is options and process. The process itself will be however long that takes. And for 2026, the money was to simply do that preliminary work anyway. So I don't know, Brad, if you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, this is a project that's was first popped on the radar back in 2019, I believe it was. There was a condition assessment down on the bridge back then as well with the same kind of issues. This year's Frechette highlighted those issues again. A lot of the work that needs to go into that pre-design for any solution will be the geotechnical, the hydraulic survey for the flows, the Q200, doing the survey works required because it is within the stream channel and the SPIA. There is a bunch of that background work that is regulatory in nature and needs to be done, whether that's a Bailey Bridge going in or a half span arch culvert or a span bridge. That's kind of the baseline work. We do also know that there is issues both upstream and downstream that have to be factored into a solution there, as well as road issues. We have a water line that does go through that requires protection as well as part of a solution. So it is a lot more in depth than it appears on the surface for a solution, but we can go back and have a chat with the engineers on scale of a permanent fix. But again, it's a lot more complicated than just replacing that existing 12, 14-foot span. Elevations will have to come up on both sides of the road for approaches and the nature of that work. So that all does take considerable effort to capture that information. The survey works then looking towards a solution there. So we can have another chat with the engineering firms to look at scale, but some of those upfront costs for the design aren't likely to change too much. The overall outcome of a solution to it can vary in scope to something simple as a Bailey Bridge that's used in forestry. There will be some larger discussions in regards to the amount of traffic usage on that, whether it's just for Colonial Farms or for through traffic. There is concerns that staff have been evaluating with the northern section of Okanagan, where it connects to Highland Park, that warrants some additional discussion as part of this project. But we can definitely come back and take a look at that, bring council some further information.
Yes, and thank you for that. I appreciate all that goes into it. And I think just knowing that we're doing our due diligence, that there might not be another option or a way to cut some of the cost is just what we're looking at. If that's what it is and we have to do it, maybe won't have an option.
Can I chime in there?
Go ahead, please.
Just a recommendation to Brad just on this issue. I'm just wondering if we do have local expertise on sort of bridge construction within wetlands, and that Landmark does a lot of these bridges throughout northern BC, et cetera, and they're relatively local. And I know that we're going straight to engineering services, but it might be worth having a conversation with staff from Landmark to take a look at that, because I think we might be overthinking it a little bit and over designing it a little bit. This isn't going to be a highway anytime soon. Yes, there is going to be commercial traffic, and yeah, there's a small amount of residential traffic that uses that area, but I'm just wondering if we need to design to the standard going. And if it becomes an issue of risk tolerance, then maybe those should be options that are presented to us. And if council is willing to accept a certain amount of risk associated with it, well, then we can sort of shoulder that for staff if we're, when it comes down to choosing options. But just throwing that out there.
Yep, through your worship to Councillor Nietzsche. We have had conversations with Landmark. We've worked on them on a number of projects and definitely recognize their work in this area of the sector. So we have had some conversations, and there is an engineering component that they undertake in these similar type projects. But definitely we are looking to firms like that for an ultimate solution to be constructed, but it's the legwork to put everything in advance for that construction portion. But yeah, conversations are ongoing.
Councillor Winter, do you want to make a comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think a lot of my questions have been answered already. I just wanted some more detail around just what we're looking at there. I think the thing it's not completely clear. I think we have some time as the state of the bridge and what kind of time frame we have as far as the immediacy of the need.
Your Worship, the structural condition assessment did make a recommendation to replace the bridge as soon as feasible. We do have the ability to extend that for a few years. It would likely involve an annual structural assessment after freshet, bringing in the steel row plates to be able to bridge that span during freshet, just to protect the existing structure and from scour, and reevaluate each year until we are in a position that we can move forward with funding for a project.
Just out of curiosity, is there an estimate of the cost of that per year to extend the duration?
Rough budget estimates of what we looked at for this year for the steel roll plates and the structural assessment, we were probably in the neighborhood of about $10,000.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions on the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, then I will call, Councillor Winter, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't believe we set a time frame in hearing that this is needed ASAP, and we're paying $10,000 a year potentially. The delays, I know we wanted to put it on the top of the pile, but I don't recall us setting a time frame.
Well, I think, yeah, CEO said we'll try to get something in the first quarter. Yeah, so if we're comfortable with that, as soon as it comes back, and our motion reflects that, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chantel. All right, then I'll call the vote then. All those in favor? And that will be carried unanimously. Was there any other projects on here? I have one that I'd like to stir the pot with again. That's just what I got to do. Mr. Smith, put you on the spot here quickly. What was the grant amount that we received when we did the intersections at Rosedale and PV and Rosedale and Okanagan? Do you recall approximately?
Brad may be able to help me. I believe that originally the grant proposal was for $9,000 and they increased it to 15, I believe.
That's good. Just a ballpark. Just thrown it out there. So that's another little bit issue I've got with this project is that even if it was $15,000 for the engineering and the work that we did at the intersections to create this mayhem, unfortunately, that we have now that needs some more attention, there's a proposal out here to spend $75,000 to fix it. And to me, that just doesn't make, once again, good fiscal sense at all. And I don't have a solution, but I'm also not comfortable supporting spending $75,000 to fix a $9,000 problem. I'm hoping that maybe this can just be deferred till we have some time and it can be done properly and done in conjunction with all the other things we've talked about, with a truck route system, or all the other traffic management solutions that we need to put into place. I just, once again, think we need a larger picture. And I have some concerns there. I'm not going to throw a motion out at this time, but I would love to hear everybody's comments on it. Councillor Drapla.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. Did that make it into the budget, or that's still sitting off to the side, right? So I agree with the mayor. I'm not comfortable spending money on that at this point. So right now it's not in the budget.
I thought that this list of projects was included in the 2026 budget. These plans that we have.
The 75,000 that you're looking at on the big screen is a project request form that was filled in, but it's specifically, that's the only one that has not been included. It is on the list of enhancement requests for council's consideration. It is not currently in the budget.
Okay, sorry, that was mine. I was under the impression that all these were included in the 2020.
This is the only exception. And just to be clear as well, this one does not have a funding source if it is approved.
Okay. So, yeah, so I'm all about deferring this and letting the project stand where it is until we can figure out how we afford to fix it and how we move forward. So I'm not supportive of this moving through on the 2026 budget. That's my thought. I'd like a couple of comments before we put a motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just for clarity, the direction that council had previously passed was that it was status quo with what's in place now, pending bringing this forward to budget. So as Mr. Martins alluded to, this is the only one in the package that's not funded as part of the what we call the service enhancement request. There's 4 of them, and so should the committee or council wish to just push this off, say a year, push it to next year's budget considerations, we can do that, and we would simply just be following the previous resolution of just leaving what's there as it is now. Certainly there is some validity to a bit of an assessment as it relates to those specific road sections, as it relates to when they will need to be done, to determine, because ideally it would be better to do them when you're doing that as opposed as a standalone, just because of some of the costs that we talked about earlier. So it would certainly be appropriate if this was the wish of the council and the committee to simply just defer it until the 2027 budget discussions, and that resolution would come forward, as I mentioned with the other ones, and we would simply just leave it status quo like the previous resolution that council's already passed.
Did we want to have any conversation on that, or should?
Well, this has already been debated, I think, previously, to be honest with you, and we're just rehashing it again. My perspective is delaying it is another year where we don't have, we aren't addressing safety concerns, and we need to put that back to the forefront and take the politics out of it and think about the safety issue, and that's my point.
Councillor Todd.
I don't want to have done nothing about this in another year. I prefer to do this than let it just sit for another year. It's a lot, it's a chunk of money that seems a bit high for what the ask is, but at least there'll be something done. There'll be a finished product at the end of it, one would hope.
Counselor Fowler.
Question, I don't know who would answer it if anybody has an answer, but do we not still have, is there still not a crosswalk supervisor at the brick school, PV and brick school? So that's a $15,000 hit for that specific light. Is that what we just read? $15,000 for that and the one on Otter Lake? It's $15,000 that could go towards the other intersection to me if we have crosswalk supervisors that crosswalk at there. To me, this is a much more important intersection. Just, I'm throwing it out there. Sorry, guys, but it's, you know, it's only like 7 o'clock. We've got a few hours left. We can talk.
Counselor Dropley, you look like you're perplexed.
I guess where I'm coming from is we don't know until we actually go in, like we already talked about with our previous resolution, until we go and have some discussions with some stakeholders, we don't really know what we're planning for yet. And so how do we know that $75,000 is even close to what we need? Like, is it way off base? And it's not funded in our current budget. So to be able to stick $75,000 into our budget, I'm assuming at taxation, is insane. Like, I don't know what percentage that would be, but it's not something I would support.
If I may, the 1% tax increase this year would be about 29,000.
Counselor Weiner.
Yeah, just to confirm, would it be best funded out of taxation, or where would you recommend it be funded from?
Currently, we haven't come to it yet in the agenda, but the projected reserve balance at the end of 2026 for roads and drainage is pretty much at zero. So there is no funding available unless one of the other projects were to be deferred. And the only other projects using that funding this year are PV Boulevard, which I don't think council wants to defer. And also the storm drainage, CCTV, and condition assessment. That's the other one that uses money from that reserve. So if that were deferred, then we would have sufficient funding in that reserve to pay for this.
Councilor Drapler reminds me that we did ask for the stakeholders and we haven't had that yet. So that is doing something as opposed to doing nothing. So I backtrack there.
Counselor Weiner.
Yeah, one thing I'd want to make sure of is if we're going to engage the stakeholders, we're going to have something on the other side. So as far as commitment goes, if we're going to go through the legwork of meeting with people to come up with a plan to move forward, I would think it's with some kind of budget in mind to, at some stage, to implement something.
I believe that same grant funding opportunity is available again this year. And if we were to write a grant and tell them what's transpired as results of what the result of getting that grant was, how it's affected our community, that we might have a good opportunity to find some funding that we could put towards just that, fixing the problem that was created for us.
Fixing a problem that was created for us?
Well,
Can you just clarify that, Your Worship?
I think the original intent when the grant was applied was for signal lights and crossing things. It was not to make these intersection changes. That was the intent of the original proposal of the grant. And it was then specified that they would like to see the money spent in this fashion.
But you need to hearken back to what the whole intent was. The intent was the safety study that was completed by a traffic engineer that identified those two intersections as the ones that were highest risk. And then a traffic engineer has made recommendations to help to mitigate some of that risk. I think I'd be honest, Your Worship, you're playing politics and you're pandering in an election year. And I think it's shameful, to be honest with you, because you're putting children's lives at risk.
I don't agree with your comments, Councillor Nietzsche.
I don't care if you agree with my comments or not. They're true.
This isn't politicking. It's about spending the taxpayers.
It is politicking. Come on.
Thanks for your comments. Yeah, to want to spend $75,000 without having any idea where we're going, I just don't think that's appropriate. I'm not opposed to having some budget until we have the stakeholder engagement and figure out what we do. I agree there's a safety issue. We need to figure out what the problem is, but I'm not supportive of throwing all that money out there at this point in time. I'm not seeing Eddie. Okay, Councilor Waiter, thanks.
I was waiting to see if Councillor Drapp had a comment, but yeah, it's still, as far as engaging with stakeholders on a maybe, I'm hesitant to have staff go through the legwork of meeting with stakeholders and the idea that we might secure funding. Again, it's a budgetary amount. It's not necessarily the whole amount. I would like to see something move forward as far as the safety goes and the engagement goes. I'm hesitant to say nothing as far as, planning for it in the future.
Thank you, Worship. So the direction from council with the clarification that was given for the targeted stakeholder process was intended to speak directly with some of the key, I'll call them users or entities, police, fire, ambulance, trucking community, the school district, bus drivers, that kind of stuff. That conversation can still happen on the premise of assessing what's there right now, i.e. with the delineators that were put in, they were done intentionally through the previous works that were talked about. Those comments can still be gathered from those targeted groups that council's approved to basically get the feedback as it relates to whether those are working or not. In some ways, it's the right way to do it, because once you start design, there isn't a stakeholder group that's going to be able to change that, because depending on what you're going to build, it's going to get built to the appropriate standard. And so, this particular project, with it not being funded right now, the consultation piece is essentially staff time, which, as I've already indicated to my team, I'm probably going to lead that a little bit just because of what's happened in the past, and it's good for me to get to know everybody. That can still take place, and a report come back later this year as a follow-up to what that looks like, if that's the way you want to go. The alternative is we, as Mr. Martin says, we find the funding solution within the budget and include it.
Thank you. I think maybe just to summarize a little bit of my understanding of everything without trying to get too far into the weeds is we applied for the initial grant. The granting organization came back and said, think bigger. They had some suggestions with that. I believe that we approved that through council for those intersections. Yeah, the design caused a lot of stir in the community, but still, I still stand by doing something with those two intersections. And so I'm happy if what we're doing for this year in terms of budget is just consulting with the user groups and coming up with a plan that fits our community to fix it. I'm okay with letting it sit for another year. I know that there's lots of people in the community that won't be, but at least we've still put in some of those recommendations from the initial traffic safety people to make those intersections safe. So yeah, it's not what people want, but I think in terms of safety, we've met that requirement and we're looking for a more permanent solution. But just like everything we do with the city, we have to prioritize what we're working on, right? We can't do everything all at once. And for me, PV Boulevard North is our priority. And there's a chance that we might need more money for that, right? So I want to be able to save some room in the budget for that. And I know it's not budgeted, but at least that's $75,000 that we would have been struggling for.
Councilor Todd.
Thank you, Worship. The scope of this to me doesn't even finish it. It just doesn't, it seems like a little bit more study, a little bit more study. And we've got those bollards up there now. We're not taking them away. We're not reducing the safety that we've already put in. We're just trying to save 75 grand and spend it somewhere with a higher priority. I'm not trying to take away from the safety aspect of any of this. I don't think I can particularly at this moment support that.
Thank you. And again, I get the priority, different priorities. I just want to remind everyone that I did remember hearing something about as far as, the curbs and the locations and crossings for different people at crosswalks, especially the visually impaired, and what those look like. And I guess in my mind, I'm concerned, I mean, we have limited staff capacity and staff time, and I don't want to engage and start to create an idea, and then it push back 2 or 3 years, then we have to engage again. And I guess that's my concern as far as a commitment at some stage, because it might make more sense to actually do the engagement next year if we're going to push it back another year. So I do hear the argument about what we have existing. I'm a little bit concerned about as far as the access goes, and if we can adjust that to make it work for everybody in the interim, that might work out. I would just prefer to have a more laid out plan.
Thank you, Your Worship. If we get the consultation from the stakeholders, and then we can budget this for next year. I'm not saying let's put it off for years and years and years. Get the consultation, budget it for next year, then it's in the budget. We're not raising it by 3 points, and it'll be there. And then we can accomplish something, and the job will be done to the right specs in the right way. And we're not just doing some kind of knee jerk, let's throw 75K at something for the sake of it. But that's
The drop one.
I agree with Councillor Todd.
Yeah, you're all waiting for me, I know. I just, we go back a couple of years on this already. And we put it off and we're putting it off and regurgitating and coming back to it. I think it was at the last council meeting or one before, we voted to go ahead and put this in the budget. And I don't understand why it's actually even coming back here. I've been around long enough. I'd like to take this $75,000 and forget about all the studies and just do it. Just do something there, like take the bollards out, the delineators out, and put in your whatever. Maybe I could do it at night one night. It just, it blows my mind that these things cost so much money, and it blows my mind that we're thinking about kicking it down the curb for another year. The whole thing was about safety and about slowing down the traffic. And $75,000 to figure out a deal how to do that is, kind of blows my mind. But, I can't not go ahead and find a way to put this in the budget. And in the meantime, we're not going to get some engineer to give us all that work done right now. We can go ahead and we can get the consultations done. That can be a package that's waiting for them when they get around to getting this on their list for engineering. I can't vote this down. I voted for it last meeting, and I'm gonna be stubborn and leave it in there, even though it's more money than we've all expected to pay for stuff like that. You break it down, it's 45,000 for one and 30 for the other. Even if we went ahead and did one or something, I don't know what to say, but I don't want to kick it down the can.
Just for clarification, Councillor Fowler, I think we just voted to bring it to budget deliberations, not that we passed it in the budget.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, but we had the conversation about what the priority was for us, and we were only moving things to budget that were a priority. And to me, at that point, for me, it was my priority, and it's still a priority for me now. Sorry.
Thank you. If I heard correctly, the most efficient time for us to bring this forward was 2027. Was that correct as far as the roads and the construction go? Does that make sense?
Through your worship to Councillor Wayner, if we were to defer this to 2027, that still just gets us to the detailed design portion of it. That is the engineered drawings that can then go out to tender for civil contractors to bid. We could look to try and group that together in 2027, but it's typically better if we can do design 1 year, construct the following. And this $75,000 is at the high end to do detailed design for both of those intersections, but that lays out the appropriate engineering plans to be able to get contractors to bid.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think just from having the conversation, I think I could guess how everyone's going to vote on this one as of right now. But I'm still in opposition to it, but maybe Mr. Martins, if you could tell us what that looks like in the actual budget at the end of the day, if we're going to vote for it, like where do these numbers change and what do they change to-ish?
Thank you. With the removal of the Okanagan Street Bridge design, that was to be funded out of the gas tax reserve. This particular project technically could come out of gas tax, but if nothing is done after that, if it's just more of an operating fact-finding mission that is not, in and of itself, is not eligible for gas tax funding. You would have to then go and do the capital work as well. Otherwise, we're in contravention of our agreement with the federal government. So with that in mind, there is no funding in the roads reserve for 2026. It would be more affordable in 2027. There is a small amount of available money at the end of 2027 for this.
Might as well keep this conversation going. I have one other little question. Don't get me wrong, I'm not getting into the detailed design description and stuff, but in here it says electrical design for RRFB lights. What is that? And are we contemplating we're gonna have lights at these intersections?
So that is the technical term for the overhead crossing lights. Currently in the configuration, that activation pole is not pedestrian accessible. So as part of the improvements, that would be relocating all that infrastructure to the new sidewalk letdowns to make them more pedestrian friendly.
So Terry, if I understood that, we could pay for this out of this gas tax this year, as long as we do the work next year. Is that correct? Or the gas reserve, whatever.
In the future.
Yes, it is, as long as this is not done in isolation. If this is done in isolation, it does not qualify. But if this leads to a capital project in the future within a reasonable time frame, then it would qualify for gas tax funding.
So we could budget this for we could do this now, budget the work for next year. It wouldn't do a massive hit to the budget, and it would make a touch more sense to me anyway that way.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, if we were prioritizing projects, I would prioritize this one much higher to use gas tax dollars for in 2026 to get the planning done, as opposed to the Okanagan Street Bridge.
Also, Draplin.
Mr. Martin, do we actually have money to do the capital works come time if we spend gas tax money on it, or are we going to be in a pickle then?
With the removal of the Okanagan Street Bridge, that was going to use up all of the rest of the gas tax. With that being removed, it frees up funding for this and the ultimate construction of it.
Question for staff.
Go ahead, Councilor.
With the detailed design in hand, then will we not be eligible to apply for additional Vision Zero granting or ICBC grant funding to do capital construction?
Yes, with a detailed design for these two intersections, we would be able to pursue grant opportunities that would fit within. And
Thank you.
Applications could go in during 2026 as well, once complete.
Thank you.
So hearing all of this, then we would like to fund this with that gas tax dollar and not the Okanagan Bridge. Is that the feeling consensus that I'm getting? And then that allows for grant funding in the future to do the upgrades. Is that where we're at? All right. Then does this just pass through, or do we require a motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. We've already passed the resolution to defer the Okanagan Street Bridge. Because this is not funded, we need a resolution to have this particular project funded with gas tax, just so that it's clear.
Just on a point of order to the CAO, this meeting though is committee of the whole meeting. We aren't actually making decisions this evening, so we're making recommendations back to council, are we not?
That is correct. And these resolutions would come as a package to the next council meeting for ratification.
Thank you.
All right, then we'll have a resolution that states that we use the gas tax funding for the study of the Rosedale intersections at Okanagan and PV Road. And then we'll figure out our funding model after that. Do we have a mover on that? Councillor Fowler, second Councillor Todd. And all those in favor? And that'll be carried and unanimously. And anybody have any further comments on the proposed projects or on the budget as a whole for tonight? No. Oh, we still got another page down there. Sorry. Go ahead, go ahead, Terry.
Okay, thank you. So then the next section in the package is the projected reserve balances. This is one of the 2 times per year that this information is brought to council. So in this particular situation, there's a forecasted year-end balance for each reserve for this year, as well as projected estimated balances for the next 5 years. So all of the projects and operating requirements using reserve funds have been integrated into these estimates. So this is a vital tool to ensure feasibility of funding for what is being proposed. So for 2026, we are showing that we are in a good position for our reserve funds to be able to afford what we're proposing to do. 2027 yields a couple of very small deficits, but again, these are estimates with estimated interest being added. I'm not concerned about that. Those are small. Where it becomes more of an issue is in 2030, and again, that's 5 years out, is even with the increased funding going towards the Parks and Recreation Reserve, we are looking at a shortfall starting in 2030. So it's a bit of a warning sign. It's nothing to be too alarmed at this point, but with the magnitude of the Parks and Recreation projects, we are looking at a very tight funding situation 5 years from now. So this again is just for information purposes to show council where we're at with our balances. And in particular, what I wanted to show is that the Roads and Drainage Reserve, even after Pleasant Valley Boulevard and well, now that the Okanagan Street Bridge has been removed, that will bring that balance up even higher. But by 2030, we are going to be, with the deferral that has been approved tonight, we are looking at over $4 million of available money by 2030 in the Roads and Drainage Reserve. So definitely going in the right direction as far as our infrastructure tax levy funding those future projects. So that's something I wanted to outline specifically for council. So I'll pause there for any questions reserve related.
Not seeing any?
Okay. The next section is residential impact. So this is what the impact is going to be on a consolidated basis for the proposed tax increases and the water rate increase. And when you factor in no change in sewer or garbage, for the average resident, the impact is estimated to be $120 for 2026, or a 4.8% overall increase for taxes and utilities. So again, that's for illustrative purposes. Just to show council where we're at there. The next section. So this particular one, thank you, Chantel. This is something that we do every year at budget time, is to go over all of the discretionary grant applications. When the application window closed, we received a total of 11 applications. Staff vetted them against the policy that council approved, and of the 11, 7 are being recommended for approval. 4 of those 11 original applications are applying for funding for operational funding purposes, and the policy specifically states that the policy is not designed for operational funding. It doesn't outright say no, but it flows against the intent of policy. In particular, the last application from Three Trees Okanagan is a bit of a hybrid situation where they're looking for operational funding, but $500 towards an educational workshops in Armstrong. So that could be considered an event rather than operational. It's open to interpretation. The 1,500 that they're applying for that they're requesting for a therapeutic summer camp at Maple Lake, that's an event, but outside the community. If council desired to provide partial funding for this one, then reasonably the $500 could be considered an event, and council could approve that. Otherwise, the other operational requests are purely operating, and as staff is recommending not to approve those. So as it stands right now, 14,000. Chantel, if you scroll a little bit further, the policy dictates a funding limit based on taxes. And that funding limit is calculated to be approximately 35,000 for 2026. So the 14,000 is well within that funding limit. 14,000 is in the budget right now proposed. That has been put in, not the 23,000, just so council is clear.
Thank you, Your Worship. And if I recall, there was a $4,500 surplus potentially as well. And I'm just looking at the request from the medical loan cupboard, asking for an extra $500 for a lightweight wheelchair, which they use throughout the community. And I believe it's well used. And I'd very much like to see that fully funded.
If I may, the policy has a limit of 2,000. So if council were to approve it, they would have to have a special resolution to deviate from policy to allow that to happen.
So I guess I'm curious if there's any other appetite to potentially give the extra $500.
Would the policy be just a one-time policy for that one thing, or would it be a policy changes for everything?
It would be a temporary deviation is what I would consider, but it reasonably should have a council resolution authorizing that one-time deviation.
Councilor Weiner.
Yeah, I think I'll just throw it out there just to see it. I'll make a motion for a one-time deviation. We did discuss this originally when we put the policy in place. If there was a request that came forward that was slightly more, and given where we're at with our allocation, I think it would be a reasonable consideration, at least for this point.
Oh, sorry, was that a motion or?
Yes, it was a motion. I'm just waiting for Chantel maybe to word it a little bit better.
Can I help, Your Worship?
Please do.
Thank you. So again, reminding the committee of the whole that's sitting here tonight that this is the committee of the whole, all of these resolutions recommending to council for ratification at a future meeting. In this particular case, committee of the whole recommending to council to approve the Armstrong Small Machine Medical loan cupboard full funding request contrary to the policy as a one-time deviation, and adjust the budget for 2026 accordingly. Does that feel okay?
It works for me.
Thank you.
Councilor Dropler.
So I'll second that, but then I have a question for staff after as well.
Fine, so we have a motion seconder. Was there any question?
Just my question.
Councilor Druff.
We've had this policy in place for a few years now, and I've noticed that a significant decrease in the requests that have come forward from previous years when we used to do it. So if I think back like a handful of years, that we would have a ton of requests that come in, and I think providing, like, we wanted the limits in place for lots of those operational costs, but I think we've probably limited the capital costs quite a bit for some organizations that could really use it. And so I'm not proposing right now, but maybe there's some room to look at this into the future, because do we take some more intakes throughout the year? Or this is it, right? And so we're approving 14,000 out of our policy that's 35,000. And so I think it would be worth revisiting at this point after seeing it in action for some years. But again, that's related, but not for tonight.
No, we've had some big discussions around doing a secondary intake policy time or grant time, but I guess it hasn't got there yet. Any other questions? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And Martins, I guess you're back.
Okay. Oh, am I waiting? Carry on. Okay, so we're almost done. This next piece is the enhancement request. So these 4 items, again, are not in the current proposed budget. So, pardon me? No, yes, of course. Thank you. So the first one, there was a request of council to bring this forward to this particular meeting, and that was the library Sunday openings from the Okanagan Regional Library. So if approved, this would be an ongoing tax-funded service change. So the cost to the city would be approximately $9,400 starting in 2026, with a possible 50% recovery from the township, but that's not guaranteed. And that would be, our share would be tax-funded. So this is one that would be a possibility. The second one is a request from the Sycamoose Ferry funding. It was a one-time funding request of $7,500 for 2026. If approved, I have proposed some funding sources there to alleviate the burden on the tax base, and that would be $3,400 of unspent council discretionary funds from 2025 that could be carried over and used, as well as $2,000 from that same fund for 2026, which would still leave approximately $2,000 for other situations. And then that would leave only $2,100 coming from taxation. So if council was wanting to add that, that would be a suggested funding combination. The number 3 was just talked about, and that was dealt with. Number 4 is a placeholder estimate for $100,000 for the demolition of the old City Hall and Chamber building. This is not in the budget, but if it is desired to be placed in the budget, then there is a potential funding source from the Building Replacement Reserve can fund this.
The only one that I have a little bit of issue with is the Sycamoose Ferry funding project. We don't have a bridge. Residents don't have access to get there. That's the last piece of the puzzle. And the ferry runs on donations now as it is. Though I'm supportive of the project as a whole, I have a little bit of challenge using taxpayers' money to fund that donation for you.
Just a thought, but what if we went with the $2,100 less and then it's covered and it's not covering taxes, not coming from taxes?
Certainly open to ideas, like I say. Unfortunately, it's just not going to, it doesn't benefit us at this time, not until, because we'll have the last portion of the trail once that bridge is built. And like I said, they do accept donations now, which I contributed to when I use it, and so lots of people did. It's a great project. I got nothing but positive stuff to say about it. But yeah, the tax dollars, that's bothered me a wee bit. So I'm not opposed to your suggestion.
Did this request come from Sycamoose Rail Trail? Where did the request come from?
Thank you, Worship. This came directly from the society that's overseeing the use of that.
I would love to see us put something in there. This is I mean, it's actually a regional thing, but I don't know that there's a function for the regional district to take part in that, but it's, it's more than just, like it's an expensive thing for the Sycamoose area to be funding, and it's a heck of a project to encourage people to use the rail trail. Anybody from Armstrong who wants to use that portion of the trail will take the ferry across, because there's no way to get across at the Narrows or at the bridge. I'd like to see us donate something. Maybe it's not $7,500, but as opposed to not participating in a donation, Well, as opposed to not participating, I would put something. I guess that's the obvious alternative.
So Dropla.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd be supportive of using the council discretionary funds as suggested and not the taxation.
Councilor Nietzsche.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just so I think council should be aware that the district of Sicamous, although there's been challenges politically at the table regarding the rail trail, they certainly have been supportive in putting forward their own funding to advance planning and design work and early stages work to the project. So they have thought about that from that perspective in a regional context. I'm totally supportive of us kicking in a couple $1,000 to help a bridge or help the ferry program through what's been suggested through that discretionary funds. So.
Councilor Fowler.
Yeah, I'm not, my intent is not to bully anybody into doing this, but just if we go back a little bit further when we were kind of struggling about how we were even going to get started with building a rail trail. Sicamous was responsible for putting forth an economic development fund grant money. I forget, maybe Ryan can comment on that, that allowed us to apply for a larger grant that we were successful for, and they did that solely on their own.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, Councillor Fowler, you're right. District of Sicamous put together seed funding through their economic development funding in conjunction with Director Martin from Electoral Area E from the Columbia Shuswap Regional District to really advance the the early stages planning work that was done that really set the stage for the major grant funding that we now have in hand, because we needed that funding to create the rail trail development plan. And that contribution in conjunction with Director Martin's support from Electoral Area E really propelled that and moved it forward. So, you know what, I think that in the spirit of cooperation, it would be good for us to contribute to that right now. And I think it'll come back to pay everybody back in the long run.
Comments, questions?
Are we still talking about that, or are we talking about the library now?
Now we're talking about the library.
Cool.
No.
I'd like to speak in favor of the library. I think that's well worth is it 4,700 or is it all 9 and then we get 47 back?
It's not guaranteed that we would receive a recovery from Spell Machine because the library is housed within our boundaries. We would have to pay the 9,400, and then we could choose to solicit recovery from Spell Machine. But there's no.
Well, even so, I'm in favor of that. I think the library Sunday openings are very. They were called for by the public. They were asked for by the locals and by the people that use the library, and it's a well used operation. So I'm all for that. Thank you.
All right, so it doesn't sound like we have too many issues with the library, the intersection safety improvement. As far as the amount requested from the Sicamous Ferry, Councillor Dropla offered up a suggestion. Did you want to make that a motion, Councillor Dropla?
Sure.
I'll make a motion to support the Sicamous Ferry funding to the amount of 3,400 from the 2025 council discretionary funds that are carried over and 2,000 from the 2026 council discretionary funds. So a total of 5,400.
And Councillor Todd seconds the motion. Was there any further question? All those in favor? Well, you got a question, Councillor? Sorry. Councillor Nietzsche?
No question on that motion. I wanted to speak to their library issue if I could.
Sorry, we'll just finish with this motion and then we'll get back to you on the library question. So that motion and all those in favor. That will be carried. Please, Councillor Nietzsche, your library comments.
Yeah, just on the library issue, I'm just wondering if we should make the motion contingent on participation from the Township of Spell Machine. It is regional in nature. It is going to be serving both communities and members from both communities. I think it would be incumbent upon them to pay, but we can't force them to. But I think we should try to lessen the tax burden and spread it across both communities, seeing as it's a community library.
Thank you. Would there be an issue if we were to defer this decision until we talk to Spalmachine?
My suggestion would be to put it in contingent on, well, logistically, it causes a problem with the budget because it's either in or it's out. And what you could do is budget for the net amount for now. And then if there is no, if the solicitation is unsuccessful, we could come back to council with perhaps another funding source suggestion at that time.
Councillor Todd?
We can lobby them. I'd be happy to work on some of them.
Well, my suggestion is that we budget for our 50% share, and then we ask that it be placed on the agenda for discussion at the next joint programs meeting.
Does that help, Councillor Drapla?
Yeah, thank you. I would be in favor of that. I mean, I know it's taking the risk that if they don't fund it, that the project doesn't go forward, but I'm okay with that risk. I think we'll be able to get them on board.
All right, then, Councillor Todd, do you like to propose a resolution, something to the effect of we'll budget for half and hope that they're on board?
I could, I'd prefer to budget for it all and then just beat them for it. You know, I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't do it, I know, but I think if we went in saying, okay, you gotta give us half, they'd get their hackles up to some degree. So I'd rather just say, well, we paid it, so now you owe us. To some, I don't know, we can go for budget for half and ask them for the other half. If you want, I don't know, I prefer to pay the whole whack and budget for the whole whack and then see if we can get it back.
So just follow-up question is, so that's roughly just shy of a 1% tax increase for Sundays at the library?
No, 1% would be 29,000.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So if I may, your worship, just in regards to budgeting for the full 9,400, we already have a surplus available for 4,500, and we've used 500 of that for the additional grant. So leaving 4,000. So finding the additional $700 will not be difficult for me, but finding an additional 4,700 might be a little more challenging. So my suggestion is to budget the 50% and go from there and see where it goes.
Okay, well, I'll make that motion and budget the half and we'll chase them down for the other half.
Great, thanks, Councillor Todd. Seconder? Councillor Drapla? Go ahead, thanks.
Thank you, Worship. Just to be really clear, the resolution will need to state that council supports the library Sunday openings, subject to receiving the funding. How Terry budgeted is a separate issue, if that makes sense. Because if we lobby them and they say yes, we want to be able to just go with it. And then Mr. Martins will have already had the information in the budget. If they say no, then it's a follow-up conversation as to what do we do with the difference. So just to be clear, the resolution is actually to support library sending hours subject to small machine support.
Very good. Thank you. So we have the motion, we have a seconder. Was there any further question? All those in favor? Carried. And I just have one question. I'm not either way. Something I just don't know. The demolition of the old city hall, how does financially, how does that work if we sell it as is versus if we take on the lead work and then sell it later? Like, what's the pros and cons on that?
Your Worship, I can certainly start with that. I think one of the challenges we're going to have is now that we've done the asbestos assessment, there are some issues with that. Mr. Smith had a chance to take me over there a few weeks ago, and it's, to put it politely, not a great building to try and sell. We did have a leak, I think, somewhere in the roof because there was water dripping into the building. So I would suggest that trying to sell it as is not an option, because to fix it in order to do that would probably cost us more than to tear it down. The placeholder that's been identified here is a bit of a guesstimate. We're trying to figure out exactly what the costs would be for the demolition. It's a delicate balance because we can't issue an RFP to solicit officially the quotes if we don't have a number in the budget, but we're not, if you go and ask somebody to give you a quote, then it basically disqualifies them from submitting on it because they would have gotten information prior to the public procurement process. So there's a chance that this number gets, added in, and as Mr. Martins alluded to, there is a proposed funding source for it, that we go through the RFP process and the number's off. I want to be very clear that that could happen because we don't have a real good sense as to what it will cost to take it down, considering the abatement information that we do have from the asbestos assessment that was done. So it's a starting point. But we may be back in front of council at some point if we go through that process and the costs that we're getting back are different than what we have approved. If it's under this, not a problem, we just carry on. But if it happens to be over, then we would be back to get approval at that time.
So if the asbestos is removed, does the fire department have limits as to what they use for training purposes?
One good bonfire.
That'd be a heck of a lot of hot dogs. We could even do hamburgers on that one.
Yeah, any? Councilor Nietzsche.
Thank you. I agree with staff's approach on this one. I think the value of the land, we can build cost recovery for asbestos abatement as well as demolition into the upset price when we do go to sell, or whatever scheme we use to develop the property or sell the property or whatever we're going to do with it. So I think we do have to budget for demolition. Even if we do go the sale route, it's much cleaner to sell a vacant lot than it will be to deal with a building that's going to require demolition and the costs associated. So I think we have to budget for it.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't disagree. I just don't know. It's a new area to me. So if everybody's comfortable with that, then I'm happy. All right.
Thank you, Your Worship. We would need a resolution to add this one in as well, at the proposed funding source as Mr. Martins identified.
Great. Moved by
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Dropoulos, second by Councillor Todd. And all those in favor? Carried. And back to you.
Thank you. There's one page left in the package to go over, and that is coming up here shortly. Sorry, no worries. No worries. So required by legislation, there are at least 3 policy statements that need to be built into the financial plan bylaw. The city is free to add whatever additional policies they see fit, but the first 3 on this list are requirements, and they change every year based on the makeup of the 2026 budget. So the 2026 budget as it is right now, these numbers are reflective in the policy. The first one is proportion of revenue. So the legislation specifically defines what that revenue is and how it's to be broken down. And so following legislative requirements, that is the breakdown based on the current proposed budget. So meaning that property tax values are at 20.23% of the budget of revenue, their definition of the revenue. And the other sources are dictated by the province that we have to outline in the bylaw. So the specific objective of this particular council is that property taxes remain less than 40% of that definition of revenue, which we are well within that policy limit. So the second policy is the distribution of property taxes amongst the various assessment classes. And this is the makeup that was used in 2025. The budget itself does not affect this. This is purely a standalone policy that council can amend at any time. This is the distribution of property taxes that was used for 2025. So at this point, my assumption is that council wants to continue with that. If the feeling is the contrary, then we can change that right now in the policy so that it goes forward and then gets brought back at tax rate determination time that those proportions would be used. So this is the suggestion that I'm making, again, based on 2025's actual distribution. The third required objective is just a narrative in regards to permissive tax exemptions. There's no specific narrative that we need to put in there. This is a narrative that has been used by the city over the past few years, and it is being reused again. The other two policies are our own that we have added, and staff is suggesting that we carry on with those existing policies, one being a tax increase of 4.8% based on previous year's general tax levy for purposes of infrastructure. Staff is recommending that that continue into the future, as well as tax increases for policing, a flat increase of $35,000 in the police levy every year for the foreseeable future. That would be carried on into 2026.
Further questions, comments? Not seeing any.
Thank you, Worship. So there's nothing else. Thank you, Mr. Martins, for that. There is a recommended resolution from the covering report that Mr. Martins had put forward, and I'll ask Chantel to bring that up on the screen. The only adjustment to this that I would suggest for council is that it says that the Committee of the Whole recommends to council that the proposed 2026 to 2030 financial plan as amended, as presented by the CFO on December 15th, be formally endorsed, and that council direct the public consultation on the proposed financial plan be undertaken at a special meeting held in January.
And that will be moved by Councillor Weiner and seconded Councillor Drapula. Was there any further question going once, twice? No, all those in favor? And that will be carried. And at this point in time, we will call for a meeting adjournment that the December 15th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting be adjourned at 7:47 p.m. Moved by Councillor Drapula, second by Councillor Todd. And that's a wrap. Thanks, everybody.